Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another episode of Buha's Block. On today's show, we're going to be covering a guide to the Lakers offseason. I'm going to be breaking down the key dates, a general overview, the Lakers trade assets, the most likely cap situation, and also looking at roster needs and breaking down everything you've wanted to know about the Lakers offseason. So if you have had any questions, any confusion, hopefully I can clear it up with this episode. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. All right, so we're going to start with the key dates of the Lakers offseason. These are the dates that are going to determine how much flexibility the Lakers have in building their roster. So first up is June 29th, which is the player option deadline for LeBron James and Dorian Finney-Smith. LeBron has a $52.6 million player option. Dorian Finney-Smith has a $15.4 million player option. June 29th is also the date for the team option for Jordan Goodwin. It's a $2.3 million team option. Next big date is July 6th, when Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura become extension eligible. Gabe Vincent is technically extension eligible then as well. Then July 20th is the date that Shake Milton's $3 million contract becomes guaranteed. And finally, the most important date for the Lakers of this offseason, August 2nd, is when Luka Doncic becomes extension eligible. As far as a general overview of the Lakers offseason, they are expected to be a team above the salary cap and above the luxury tax. They should be a little bit under the first apron, depending on what they do with their $5.7 million tax mid-level exception. And they potentially could push past the first apron and remain under the second apron, similar to last season. That means that the most likely route to improving the roster is either making a trade or trades, or using that $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception. Outside of a trade or two, the most likely way that they can improve the roster is through one of the exceptions, most likely the $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level exception. LeBron determines their flexibility to an extent. He would have to take approximately a $15 to $17 million discount to allow them to use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which goes up to $14.1 million as the first year salary. But as we reported at The Athletic previously, sources close to LeBron indicate that it is unlikely that he is going to be taking a pay cut. And Tuesday, on the Pat McAfee show, ESPN's Shams Charania reported that he's hearing the most likely outcome is LeBron opting in to that $52.6 million player option, which we will be covering in our salary breakdown. So it's looking like LeBron is going to be under contract at somewhere around $50-ish million for next season, which does limit the Lakers' financial flexibility. And even if LeBron leaves, if you look at the actual numbers, they won't have much cap space if Dorian Finney-Smith opts in or resigns. So they could have somewhere between like $15 to $20 million in cap space. And in terms of free agents, the Lakers have 3 players who will be hitting unrestricted free agency: Jackson Hayes, Alex Len, and Markieff Morris. It could extend to more depending on what happens with LeBron, what happens with Dorian Finney-Smith, what happens with Shake Milton, and what happens with Jordan Goodwin. But as of right now, they have 3 official roster players who are hitting free agency, and technically Christian Coloco is a restricted free agent, so that's another name to watch depending on how the Lakers view him. As far as trade assets, the Lakers can trade either their 2031 or 2032 first-round draft pick, but not both picks. They have upwards of 5 pick swaps: 2026, 2028, 2030, 2031, 2032. Obviously, if they trade one of those 2031 or 2032 draft picks, they cannot use it as a pick swap. They have 1 second-round pick. Then they have the expiring contracts of Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, and Maxi Kleba. I note that Austin Reeves is functionally an expiring contract because he has 1 more year left until his player option for 2026-2027, and he is almost certainly going to decline that opt-out and sign a bigger contract next summer, though he is extension eligible. He's only extension eligible for a 4-year, $89 million contract, which is below market value for Austin. So I'm going to assume here that Austin is not going to be signing an extension with the Lakers this summer. They also have sophomore Dalton Knecht, who they were willing to put in the Mark Williams deal just ahead of the deadline. He is someone who's on a team-friendly rookie scale contract, which holds value. Then they have the mid-size contract of Jared Vanderbilt, though he does have 3 years left. The non-guaranteed contract of Shake Milton, though if they are using him to salary match, they are going to have to guarantee at least a portion of that contract for matching purposes. It gets a little complicated. And then LeBron, it's worth noting, has a no trade clause. So even if LeBron opts in, the Lakers cannot trade him without his approval. And just as a reminder, with the aprons, we live in an apron world, as Rob Pelinka has said. The Lakers would be hard capped at the first apron if they use any portion of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception or the biannual exception, which is worth about $5.1 million. If they acquire a player via sign-in trade, so for those who are advocating for a sign-in trade for, say, Miles Turner, which I think is unrealistic, that would hard cap them at the first apron, which they are currently projected to be at just below it or a bit above it. And if they take back more than 100% of matching salary in a trade, they are also hard capped at the first apron. In terms of the second apron, they're hard capped at the second apron if they use the taxpayer mid-level exception, that $5.7 million exception. If they aggregate players in a trade to match salary, it gets a little complicated, so we'll leave that at that. If they send out cash in a trade, if they send out a player in a sign-in trade and take back a contract, or if they send out a player in a sign-in trade and use a trade exception from that trade. So those are the ways they get hard capped at the second apron. Now let's get into the salary cap breakdown. So just as a reminder here, the projected salary cap for the 2025-26 season, this is a projection. It could change depending on where the league's finances come in. We won't know that until June 30th, but the projected salary cap for next season is $154.6 million. The luxury tax is projected to be $187.9 million. The first apron, $195.9 million, and the second apron, $207.8 million. In terms of guaranteed contracts for next season, the Lakers only have 8 players under contract. Luka Doncic, Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleba, Dalton Knecht, and Bronny James. You add those 8 contracts up, and it brings them to $118.2 million. So as a reminder, $154.6 million for the salary cap. So they're about 40-ish, 35-ish million under the cap. However, I'm going to add in the contract of Jordan Goodwin, the team option. I just don't see a world in which the Lakers decline that. Jordan Goodwin making lower than the average minimum salary, to me, is a steal. So just even if he's not in the rotation and he's just a back-end roster player, Jordan Goodwin making $2.3 million is a value. So I think the Lakers are going to pick up his option and he's going to be on the roster. So you add him in, now you're at $120.6 million, which is about $34 million under the projected salary cap. But that's before we factor in Shake Milton, LeBron, DFS, or any of the empty roster charges. So let's add in the player options for LeBron and DFS, especially with the recent news that LeBron is likely going to be picking up that player option. So if you put in LeBron at his player option and DFS, maybe he does opt out and re-sign at a lower number, or he extends with a lower number. You could play with the numbers a little bit, but let's just say for argument's sake, he opts in player option. That gives the Lakers some flexibility with his contract situation and with their cap sheet for next summer. But let's just say for argument's sake, Both guys opt in player option. Lakers also exercise the team option for Jordan Goodwin. Now, all of a sudden, that brings them up to $188.6 million. So that would be $34 million above the salary cap, about 600-ish thousand above the luxury tax, and a little bit about 7 million or so under the first apron. And this is without an empty roster charge, which would be applied in this scenario. Essentially, it is a cap hold for any cap sheet that has fewer than 12 players. They take the rookie minimum and they apply it to however many empty roster spots you are under 12. So in this scenario, the Lakers have 11 players under contract. They are one under the league minimum of 12, which means they would have one empty roster charge on their roster. If they were at 10, it would be 2. If they were at 9, it would be 3, etc. If they were at 12, it would be 0 empty roster charges. And if we add in the empty roster charge here, you see it's $1.27 million. It brings them to $189.9 million, which is almost $2 million exactly above the luxury tax. And this is what the Lakers cap sheet could realistically look like going into free agency. LeBron opts in, DFS opts in, they exercise the team option on Jordan Goodwin, and then they have this empty roster charge, and they're at about 189.9. And if they use the taxpayer mid-level exception of about 5.7, all of a sudden they are closer to about 195 million, which gets them right up against the first apron. But with the taxpayer MLE, you are not hard capped at the first apron. You are hard capped at the second apron. Let's also look at with Shake, if they want to guarantee the contract of Shake Milton to include him in a potential trade, you add in his $3 million. Now it jumps up to $191.6 million. So now they are almost $4 million above the luxury tax, still about $4.5 million under the first apron. They're at 12 players, so they will not be charged with the empty roster charge. Now, what I think is the most realistic thing is LeBron opts in, DFS opts in, or is on the books at around that $15.4 million number. They exercise the team option on Jordan Goodwin. Then they use the taxpayer mid-level exception on their primary signing of the offseason, and they sign a couple of guys to minimum salaries. Here, I'm using the average minimum slot, which is 5 years of service. But depending on years of service, it could go all the way up to $3.6 million. So there is some wiggle room here in terms of adding an additional 1 million or so, maybe closer to like 900,000 for each minimum slot. But with this group, the Lakers are at $199.6 million, which puts them almost $4 million above the first apron. They're still at about $8 million under the second apron. They still have one more roster spot available, but they are at the league minimum of 14. And the Lakers have, in previous seasons, tended to like to have an empty roster spot just for trade flexibility or signing guys on the buyout market or in free agency during the season, converting a two-way guy, whatever it may be. It would be returning 11 of the 15 players from last season. No Shake, no Jackson, no Alex Len, no Markieff Morris. And you replace 3 of those 4 players with a taxpayer mid-level exception guy and 2 new minimum guys. So this to me is a facsimile of what the Lakers cap situation could look like entering next season. And now to just have some fun with this, let's say LeBron takes a $15 million pay cut to help facilitate the Lakers using the 14.1 non-taxpayer mid-level exception. If we look at the cap sheet now, you have LeBron making $37.6 million, which is just a straight $15 million pay cut. Dorian opts in with the player option. Jordan Goodwin, Lakers exercise his team option. You have a couple of average minimum slots, and you have a player in there for the non-taxpayer MLE of up to $14.1 million. In this scenario, the Lakers are about $3 million under the first apron, and they have to be under the first apron because they'd be hard capped at the first apron due to using that non-taxpayer MLE, and that's why LeBron has to take a $15+ million pay cut. You could technically take a little bit less, maybe $13 million even close to 12 million, but you want some wiggle room under the first apron, especially when looking at the average minimum slots of if you are signing some veteran guys who have played 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, that minimum salary is going to be a little bit higher. It's going to be above $3 million. And all of a sudden you're going to be pushing up against the first apron. This would be probably closer to 2 million under the first apron, or even 1.5. Like 15 is basically the minimum that LeBron could take from a pay cut perspective, unless the Lakers find a way to salary dump a Maxi Kleber, a Gabe Vincent, and that opens up some wiggle room where maybe it's a few $1 million less for LeBron. But to salary dump a guy is going to have some ramifications for the receiving team. They're also going to want an asset to take on that contract. So are the Lakers using their first round pick to dump one of these guys? Maybe they dump a Kleber with the first, but then that's their only move that they can make from a trade perspective in terms of leveraging that one first round pick. And then they can sign a non-taxpayer mid-level exception guy, but like that's the one card they're playing at that point, is they are dumping a player. LeBron doesn't have to take as much of a pay cut, and then they could use that non-taxpayer MLE, but they don't have a pick now for a trade. So they're in a bit of a jam here in terms of just available assets to upgrade the roster. But this is another example of if LeBron takes a $15 million pay cut, they can sign someone to that non-taxpayer MLE, but they are going to be pushing up against the first apron, and they are going to be hard capped there. And then finally, for those wondering what this all looks like if LeBron leaves, here is the Lakers cap sheet with no LeBron. Assuming that Dorian Finney-Smith still opts in with his player option, assuming they exercise the team option for Jordan Goodwin, and we won't even use the average minimum slot. We will use just the 2 empty roster charges here. So the Lakers would have Luka, Rui, DFS, Austin, Vando, Gabe, Maxi, Dalton, Goodwin, Bronny, and 2 empty roster charges to get them to that minimum of 12. They would be at $138.5 million in total salary, which is only $16 million below the projected salary cap, which means they'd only have about $16 million to spend in cap space. And maybe they could dump a Kleber with the first and get that into like the mid 20s. But even then, if you are signing, say in a best case scenario, a Miles Turner, you are replacing LeBron James with a Miles Turner. You are not having these exceptions, and then the rest of the group is going to be a minimum contract, barring you making a trade. So if LeBron leaves, the Lakers don't have all this cap space. It's not a good summer to have a bunch of cap space. If you look at it, it's not a good free agent class. So for the Lakers, if LeBron ends up leaving and just walking in free agency, it's going to be hard for them to field a contender next season. They are going to take a notable step back in terms of roster construction, particularly at the top end of the roster. And finally, the Lakers team needs, they need a new starting center. They need a new 3-and-D starting wing, whether that's a player in the backcourt or the front court. They need a new backup center, whether they retain Jackson Hayes and it's someone pushing him for that backup spot, or it's just a new center altogether. And they need more depth at the back end of the roster. Spots 11 to 15 were concerning this past season. They've been concerning for a couple of seasons now, and the Lakers need to do a better job of uncovering some upside at the back end of the roster, but also veterans who can actually play and contribute in the regular season and not relying on their top 9 or top 10 as much as they did, at least in the regular season. When it comes to the playoffs, you're going to go with 7 to 9 guys, or maybe 5 if it's the second half of game 4. But for the most part, 7 to 9 guys in the playoffs, but you need more than that in the regular season. And the Lakers just did not have 11 reliable players at really any point this season. So they need to increase their margin for error with the back end of the roster and sign some better minimum guys than, say, Alex Len or Markieff Morris. But that will do it for this Lakers offseason guide. I hope I answered most of your questions. If you have additional questions, drop them in the comment section below. I didn't really get into the trade stuff as much. I wanted to lay out the trade assets in terms of the picks and in terms of the expiring contracts and whatnot. But of course, there are different ways the cap sheet can look depending on what trades the Lakers make, but we don't know that yet. So I think it's premature to be trying to project what that would look like on the cap sheet. But if you have any additional questions, drop them in the comment section on YouTube or on the comment section on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. But that will do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later in the week with a guest. I will talk to you then.